Welcome back, Nets fans. So the Nets have made a few moves here in the past couple of days. I feel like they're worth talking about. I wanted to make a Millsap reaction yesterday. Luckily, I waited because a couple of things happened today that are pretty important. So I'll run down them real quick. Paul Millsap signs with the Brooklyn Nets, veterans minimum, 36 years old now, plenty of playoff experience. There's a chance Paul Millsap declines mightily next year, which I hope is not the case. But being his age and kind of slowly declining in his play a bit, I mean, he had a good year 2 years ago, so I mean, it's not like he's that far removed from having a good season. But there's always concerns when you sign a guy of that age. But I'm excited about it. Lamarcus Aldridge gets physically cleared to play and rejoins the Nets. Of course, the Nets, they got Aldridge last year. He was bought out by the Spurs. The Nets signed him. He played about 2-3 weeks for the Nets, then had the irregular heartbeat, was kind of forced to retire temporarily, I guess, then was cleared to play and was brought back by the Nets today. So that was great news to see. And Deandre Jordan, I talked about that last time, how I voiced my opinion about you can't bring Deandre Jordan back and have him get a bunch of DMPs and pay the guy $10 million per year. So the Nets solved that problem. They trade DeAndre Jordan plus 4 second-round picks to the Pistons. They always trade with the Pistons, I feel like. The Nets now have 3 Pistons guys. They trade them to the Pistons in exchange for Jahlil Okafor, once a top 3-5 pick with the Sixers back in 2015, I believe. And Sekou Doumbouya, a guy that I think went in the first round a couple years ago with Detroit. Intriguing on defense. We'll talk about him later. The Nets also save $47 million in cap space plus the tax, and Jordan had 2 years and $20 million remaining on his contract. And Alize Johnson, who was signed last year, I believe, by the Nets, had that 2020 game against Minnesota, I believe, out of nowhere, had some decent minutes for the Nets, good energy player, but probably did not have a role on this team, so it makes sense. I feel bad for Alize. He gave us everything he had, but it had to happen, I guess. So, yeah, Alize Johnson was waived, and as you can see by the Matt Brooks tweet down here, this is kind of like the current rotation, possibly, of what the Nets have, and it's such a talented roster. I mean, this team... if they don't make the finals and they're healthy, that's bad. So this team has to go somewhere next year. I mean, of course, you have to have at least 2 of the big 3 healthy, the important bench guys, whether it's Patty Mills or like a Joe Harris. I know he's a starter, but like Joe Harris or Millsap, even Blake Griffin, guys like that. Most of those guys, if they stay healthy, I feel very good about this team at least making the finals next year. Of course, we'll find out what happens out west. Are the Lakers legit? We'll find out during the season. But, I do feel good about this team right now making it out of the East based on who's on their roster. So for Paul Millsap, as I said, he's 36 years old now. He's 6'7", 257. More of a 4, in my opinion. The Nets kind of lacked a true center up until signing Aldridge, honestly. They were going to try and put Blake Griffin at center, try and put Nick Claxton at center, even Day'Ron Sharpe, who they drafted this year, at center. So they didn't have like a true center, and Paul Millsap doesn't exactly solve that problem, but Paul Millsap gives the Nets something they need, which is more front court depth. We saw that trying to stop Giannis last year. They just did not have enough bodies down low. They tried to put Blake Griffin on him, and Blake Griffin did the best he could, but sometimes that was not enough. So Paul Millsap's been around forever. He's been playing since 2006 with Utah. That's when Darren Williams was there. I mean, that's a blast from the past. But yeah, he's been playing in the NBA now for 15 seasons. Went to Atlanta, of course, had 4 All-Star games in a row. Then he went to Denver, had some nice seasons there. And although he's up there in age, you know what you're getting from Paul Millsap, and I feel like that veteran leadership role and still playing at a pretty high level will help this team. Now, Paul Millsap had he had 9 points last year, which was his lowest since 2007, which was his second year in the NBA. So there's probably a bit of a decline there. His 3-point percentage dropped off pretty significantly from the year prior. He shot 43% in the 2019-20 season, then dropped all the way to 34% last year. So that's not good to see. But Paul Millsap will give you a guy that can do the pick and pop game. Maybe a few times a game he can bring up the ball and make a flashy pass here and there. Like, he's not going to run the break for you every single possession, but there are times where he will do that for you. Millsap can, face up and hit a jumper, and he's down low. He's pretty tough. So, I mean, Paul Millsap's not going to be an absolute game changer for this team, but just as a role player playing 15, 20 minutes per game, he can give the Nets something they need. And when Blake Griffin needs a breather, or even Nick Claxton, if Claxton, sometimes he gets injured, unfortunately, like sometimes you need a guy there. I feel like Paul Millsap's going to be good for the playoffs if hopefully we get there. But so I mean, I can't have the highest expectations for a guy who's now 36. As I said, If he keeps declining, it would not shock me, but I do think Paul Millsap fills a need and has a role on this team. I do expect him to be more of a bench guy. He's probably going to start some games this year. I mean, for example, last year he started 36 games, played in 56, so he started more than half his games for Denver last year, probably until they got Aaron Gordon, if I had to guess. But there will be times he starts, but I feel like when the Nets are fully healthy, I personally expect Paul Millsap to be more of a bench guy with Aldridge and probably Blake Griffin starting, and then, well, maybe not, because then I don't know how the Nets are going to do it, honestly, because there is a world where if they want to go big, you can have the lineup of James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and then put Paul Millsap at the 4, or Blake Griffin at the 4, and Lamarcus Aldridge at the 5, or there's the Joe Harris lineup where you can go James Harden, Kyrie, Joe Harris, put KD back at the 4, and then have either Aldridge or Blake Griffin at center. So I don't know how they're going to do it. They can probably change it up throughout the year and see what's working and what's not working, depending on who they're playing and things like that. But this definitely gives the Nets a lot more options. I like the versatility of a Paul Millsap. He's a guy that can stretch the floor. I definitely love seeing that. He can create his own shot sometimes. He's not taking guys off the dribble like Kyrie Irving, but like he has a little bit of like finesse to his game. He can do a spin move down low. His post game is okay. As once again, he can body guys down low. So yeah, I'm fine with the move. Honestly, it's a minimum deal, so it's like you can't complain about it. I'm happy we got him. I was excited. It's just a slight concern that when a guy's 36, he may start to decline a bit. So that's the one thing I'm watching out for. Now for Lamarcus Aldridge, he's also 36 years old. Now, as I said before in a tweet, I'm happy for him on a personal level. I mean, having your career I know he's 36, but having your career kind of taken away from you and it's not even like your decision, that's a crappy feeling. Like with what happened with Chris Bosh, for instance, I forget exactly what happened with Chris Bosh, but he had some type of thing where he had to retire earlier than he wanted to. And having that happen to somebody it's not good. You don't want to see it. So on a personal level, I'm happy for Lamarcus Aldridge that he can come back and one day hopefully retire on his own terms. So I am happy. But as a Nets fan, I am happy to get Lamarcus Aldridge back as well. And people kind of I guess belittle the not having Lamarcus Aldridge in the playoffs. I mean, every time I brought that up and as a reason the Nets lost to the Bucks, people were like, it's Lamarcus Aldridge, dude. He's like old as hell. Who cares? But like Lamarcus Aldridge was starting for this team until he unfortunately had to retire. And Lamarcus Aldridge had a role on this team as a guy that can once again stretch the floor, hit some threes from the top of the key. They were giving the ball like facing up on the about 15 feet away from the basket on the baseline. He was making some shots and he's getting some rebounds for them. Of course, he was just a big body down low. The Nets definitely lacked that. Of course, as I mentioned in that Bucks series, the Nets could have used some big body guys that were like at least talented. Like you couldn't just throw in like Alizé Johnson in the Bucks series and say, yeah, go help us win this. Like it's you need someone with some offensive talent, and as we know, Lamarcus Aldridge with that turnaround in the post, that turnaround fadeaway he has is lethal. So having Lamarcus Aldridge back, I mean, I'm happy about it. Once again, it could be a thing like Millsap where maybe he starts to decline, but Aldridge does have some time off to his in his benefit. He did not play the last 2 months of the season last year, so he will have some extra time to kind of get back in game shape here. So I'm excited for him. I'm happy for him on a personal level once again. He could very well be the Nets starting center this year. Once again, depending on how the rotations go and if the Nets want to go small or big in the starting lineup, but there's a chance that, he does start the year at center. I do personally think they're going to go with Blake Griffin, but I could be wrong. So we'll find out. Hopefully when the preseason starts and whatnot, we'll find out what the Nets want to do there. Now, as for the DeAndre Jordan trade and what they got back there, of course the Nets got a diamond in the rough last year in the Zanan Musa trade. They got Bruce Brown back from the Pistons. They got Blake Griffin on the buyout. That definitely was great. And for Jahlil Okafor, I don't have the highest expectations. He was actually once a Brooklyn Net. I kind of forgot. I mean, I did remember, I was like, oh yeah, he was a Net, but I forget the time that he was on the Nets. Of course, I was a fool watching every game back then, but I don't remember Jahlil Okafor having the biggest impact on the team. I was excited when they traded for him. I remember I was about to go into a class at college and I saw the alert and I was like, oh crap, Jahlil Okafor, he was a high pick and has some talent. And that's the thing with Okafor, he has talent. The way I can sum up Okafor's career, and someone once said this, I wish I knew who it was because it makes a lot of sense, is that if Jahlil Okafor played in the 80s or 90s, 90s, he would have been a very good player. But what Jahlil Okafor does in today's NBA is just not what coaches and teams are looking for, unfortunately. Now, he has had injuries as well. He's had knee injuries, ankle injuries. He has missed some time in the past. But Jahlil Okafor is just like, he has a smooth game offensively in the post. He has that spin move, that drop step. Like, he's very good down low. Like, he definitely has some talent. Does a bit of a hook shot sometimes. His hands are massive. Like, the ball is like a Nerf ball in his hands. Kind of looks like this, honestly, when he's grabbing the ball. It's crazy. So Jahlil Okafor definitely has some talent. It's just his defensive effort was in question, his health was in question, and it's things like that will kind of get you out of a rotation. So obviously he has not lived up to I want to know what pick he was exactly. I think he was like top 5. I gotta look real quick. But Jahlil Okafor was a guy that he was taken, I think, right after Joel Embiid. So it was a weird time for the pick, and after Nerlens Noel. So like they took him at a weird time. If you're the 76ers, and obviously that really did not work out for them. And then he was traded to the Nets a couple years later. So I think they traded Trevor Booker for him, so it wasn't like the Sixers got a whole bunch in return here. So he was the 3rd overall pick back in 2015. Wow, so a top 3 pick obviously has not worked out, but he might get waived by this team. Like if the Nets get another veteran on this team that they think is better than Jahlil, it wouldn't shock me if he was cut, but we'll find out what happens here. But I love this team. I love this rotation, love this team. I mean, we'll go down the list here in the Matt Brooks tweet here. At the point guard position, James Harden, you have Patty Mills, awesome backup point guard. Then you have Javon Carter, who, will give you that defensive effort that you need, that bulldog mentality. You have Kyrie, Bruce Brown, who I guess could be listed at center technically. Cam Thomas, who I think, as I said before, I think Cam Thomas will have some nights where he plays around 20 minutes per game. It's not going to be every game because the Nets do have a lot of depth, but there will be times if, guys are injured or sitting and having, rest nights. I think Cam Thomas might get some minutes at some point. Of course, KD, you have Joe Harris, you have DeAndre Bembry, who came over from the Toronto Raptors, and he's a good energy player, good defender, plays the passing lanes well, has some offensive ability. And that's the same thing with, what's the guy with the tough name? Dumbayoa. I mean, he has I was watching his highlights, of course. His jump shot definitely has potential, and he's 20 years old, by the way. Once again, he was like a first-round pick. I'm assuming the Pistons picked pretty high. A first-round pick, and his jump shot looks pretty smooth. Now, his percentages have not been that good. He's shooting somewhere in the 20% range for three-point percentage so far in his career. But he has like a smooth stroke. So like if the Nets can like somehow fix that jump shot and make it more consistent, he doesn't have like an ugly hitch. There's no like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist type hitch in this jump shot. I think there's some potential there. And what he can do on defense, Doumbaya, I think it's Doumbaya. But what he can do on defense is also impressive. He has length. He also plays passing lanes well. Can definitely get some steals in there with the long arms. So I do like that defensive upside he possesses. But if he can like fill out as an offensive player, there's some potential here for sure. And I'm sure he's on like a cheaper contract being a recent draft pick. So, yeah, I mean, we'll go down. Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap at the 4. Those guys, of course, I mean, they are solid veterans. I still feel good about Blake Griffin. I think he has 1 or 2 good years left in him. And Paul Millsap, once again, if he's your bench player, a second rotation guy, I mean, that's fine. You're not expecting Paul Millsap to come in here and be prime Millsap scoring 18 points per game. You're not expecting that from Paul Millsap. If he gives you 15, 20 minutes per game, or maybe not even 20, just 15 good minutes per game, you're probably happy with the return on Paul Millsap. And then at center, you have like Lamarcus Aldridge, who we just talked about, Nick Claxton, and you also have James Johnson. I don't know why you put James Johnson in center. I guess it's possible, but I look at him as more of like a 3 or a 4 type guy. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, personally, I feel bad for DeAndre Jordan that it didn't work out. Now, if he goes to the Lakers, who are one of the finals contenders as well this year, they'll be up there in like the best finals odds for 2022. But, I know that Kyrie and KD were friends with DeAndre. He came over with them when they signed with the Nets all on the same day. And, I wasn't really excited. Like, I was excited, of course, to get Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Don't get me wrong there. But seeing DeAndre Jordan sign for 4 years, $40 million along with it, I was like, I guess. Like, if you're going to give me 2 superstars, fine. But, like, it wasn't the best contract. But, DeAndre Jordan's a great guy. He handled the whole situation of not playing and kind of getting just benched by coach's decision as well as you can. He was always supportive. He was always helping the young guys, especially Nick Claxton. Like, he was just a good teammate, a good guy. I feel bad the way it ended here with the Nets, and I thought there was maybe a chance he would have had a role here with the Nets next year, but of course they, reached this whole trade, and the Pistons buy him out, so now he's a Laker. But yeah, I just feel bad, but unfortunately that's how it went. And I feel like a lot of it, when James Harden came over especially, that's kind of when like DeAndre Jordan just kind of got like phased out of rotation. And a lot of times if you watch the Nets closely like I do, like I don't know, I see all this like these stupid little things. The Nets would be like on a run, the other team would call timeout. Like, let's say the Nets go on like a 12-0 run, everything's looking great. Then, the other team would call timeout, and then James Harden would just go over to the side with DeAndre Jordan and have like a whole side of conversation and show him what to do on the court and kind of like coaching him in a way. And I feel like James Harden, like, he is like, a leader, and he'll like try to show guys what to do and things like that. But he was especially tough on DeAndre Jordan. Like, if you watch the Nets, James Harden was like always not like up in DeAndre's face in a bad way. It was definitely like in a respectful way, but like always just trying to tell him like, I want you to do this, do that. And James Harden and DeAndre definitely had some chemistry on the alley-oops. I mean, they weren't like not on the same page ever, but it wasn't like James Harden, Clint Capella type level, back when he was in Houston. So, I feel like that probably has something to do with it. And then once Lamarcus Aldridge was signed here especially, that's when DeAndre Jordan just stopped playing altogether, and Nick Claxton got healthy around that time as well. So then eventually they started playing DeAndre a bit more, but then once again when the playoffs started, he was out of the rotation because Blake Griffin was coming on and Nick Claxton was there. So it was not the way I wanted DeAndre Jordan's tenure here to end in Brooklyn, but it is what it is. DeAndre was not the same defender he once was. His offensive game was limited, so I understand why they did it. It's just he's a good guy, and I felt bad. So anyway, that'll do it for this video. I don't know when the next time I'm going to talk about the Nets is. I mean, I'm sure I'll do a season preview and things like that, but yeah, I'll try to think about what future videos I can do for this team. Maybe I'll talk about like the rotations and what I expect, because obviously there's a whole lot of different rotations you can have with this team. Maybe I'll try and think of the final 15 guys that'll make this roster, in my opinion, things like that. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about these moves? Are you excited about Millsap? Did the almost said the Giants, did the Nets make a good trade here with DeAndre Jordan? Are you pissed they gave up 4 second-round picks? They should be late second-round picks, hopefully, but still, I mean, some people might not like that. But anyway, let me know how you guys feel, and I'll talk to you guys next time.